Rangan sir, good evening.
A bird is singing.
What is that?
One bird is singing.
Where from? I don't know.
But birds' voices are natural and sweet. So
yes, very good.
So I think it should be allowed to sing.
Of course, they bring music to us.
Joseph sir, good evening. Joseph from Kerala, good evening.
That's nice. We can hear more bird sounds.
Hey, how are you?
Rangan sir, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
வணக்கம் சார். காமெண்ட் பேசு.
கேக்குதா நான் பேசுறது?
கேக்குதுங்க.
எக்கோ அடிக்குது. காமாட்சி.
எக்கோ அடிக்குதா?
ஆமா.
எங்க இருந்து அடிக்குது?
இல்ல யாரோ உமா பேசும்போது எக்கோ அடிக்குது. ஒரு சார் ஸ்பீக்கர் பேசும்போதும் எக்கோ.
யார் பேசும்போதுங்க?
நீங்க ஏன் ஓரமா உட்கார்ந்து ஸ்கிரீன்ல ஓரமா உட்கார்ந்துருக்கீங்க?
நான் ஓரமா உட்காரல, கேமராவை ஓரமா வச்சிருக்கிறேன். வெப் கேமரா.
ஹலோ.
பாதியா வெப் கேமராவை பாதியா வச்சிருக்கிறேன்.
சரி சரி. அது மூலையில உட்கார்ந்துருக்க மாதிரி.
வேணும்னா வச்சுக்கலாம்.
மறுபடியும் எக்கோ வருதா?
உங்களுக்கு தான் அந்த இது கரெக்டா கிடைக்கல.
எல்லாருமே ஆடியோ
உங்கதுல ஆடியோ நாட் கிளியர். யுவர் ஆடியோ இஸ் நாட் கிளியர் முரளி.
உமா வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம்ங்க. Now I will start my video also, so people can see me. I mean, yeah.
Hello.
So yes, Gilvan.
உமா வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம் வணக்கம்.
ஹலோ உமா.
ஹலோ ஹலோ வணக்கம்.
நான் ரங்கன் பேசுறேன்.
நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா?
நல்லா இருக்கிறேன். நீங்க எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா?
ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கேங்க. ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம் உங்க குரலை கேக்குறதுக்கு.
வெரி குட் வெரி குட்.
வணக்கம். அம்மா வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம் வணக்கம். we have 3 minutes. Huh?
நமஸ்தே.
ராமமூர்த்தி
ஆமா
மட்டும் நமஸ்தே வணக்கம்.
வந்தாச்சு எல்லாரும்.
வணக்கம் ராவதி.
வணக்கம் வணக்கம். வந்துட்டீங்களா?
நல்லா வணக்கம். நீங்க இந்த கன்னியாகுமரியை பிடிச்சி வச்சிருக்கீங்க?
பேக்ரவுண்டு கன்னியாகுமரியில் இருக்கேன்.
வாவ்,
ஓ வசு,
மொட்டையெல்லாம் அடிச்சிருக்கீங்க. எங்களால முடிய வெட்ட முடியலீங்க.
சமயம்
நல்லா அழகா
கிடைக்கும்.
அழகா மொட்டை அடிச்சிட்டீங்களே.
நமக்கு நாமே அடிச்சுக்க வேண்டியதான், அடுத்தவங்க அடிக்காம.
முடி வளர்ந்துகிட்டே இருக்கு, வெட்டுறதுக்கே இடம் இல்ல. என்ன ஏதாவது படம் எடுக்கிறீங்களா?
So, some audio is playing at the background, right?
மியூட் பண்ணி.
You're right. That's another meeting.
Huh?
இன்னொரு மீட்டிங் இருந்தது, அதை க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டேன்.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I have to do my job of president, otherwise Kamakshi will kick me out.
என்ன விசி சார் ஆடியோ மியூட் பண்ணி வச்சிருந்தாரு.
யாருது?
பால் சார், பால்.
இருக்கட்டும், ஒரு 2 மினிட்ஸ் தான் இருக்குது, அதனால அவர் மியூட் பண்ணி இருக்கட்டும். இனி எல்லாம் க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிடலாம்.
சூப்பர் கட்டிங் அண்ணா.
வேற ஒருத்தர் ஃபாரினர் ஒருத்தர். வேற ஃபாரினர். ஹலோ முரளி
சார் வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம், எப்படி இருக்கிறீங்க?
நல்லா இருக்கேன். வீட்டுக்குள்ளே அடைஞ்சிருக்கிறேன். வீட்டை விட்டு வெளியே இறங்குறது இல்ல.
சரி,
நீங்க எப்படி நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா சார்? வீட்டுல
நான் இங்கே தான் இருக்கிறேன், எங்கேயும் போல.
ஸ்டே ஹோம், ஸ்டே கேர், டேக் கேர்.
என்ன கருணாகரன் பேசலையா? அவரு கிடைக்கலையா?
இருக்கிறார், பேசுறார். Okay, let us start, Uma.
Yeah, so you will start
Are you
it,
ready?
right? I am ready.
Okay. Good evening to all, and good morning to Professor GILVAN. On behalf of our Tamil Mozhiyiyal Sangam, I invite Professor Uma Papusamy to preside over the function.
வாய்ஸ் ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க தமிழ்ச்சி.
சார்,
வாய்ஸ் கொஞ்சம் ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. உங்க வாய்ஸ கொஞ்சம் ரைஸ்.
Uma.
Oh, yes. So, should
Uma,
I
you
start?
can start. Okay.
Okay. அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். A very good morning to Prof.
உமா, கொஞ்சம் உங்க இதை மட்டும் நீங்க ஆன் பண்ணிக்கங்க.
அன்மியூட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
ஒண்ணுமே வரலையா?
Okay, now it is okay.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். Good evening to all. A very good morning to Gilvan. Bomjia to you. I am on the behalf of Tamil Linguistics Association. I am very happy to welcome you to be part of us today evening. Professor Gilvan Müller de Oliveira from University of Santa Catarina in Florianópolis, Brazil. I think most of you who are associated with works on multilingualism might have read some of his important works. Gilvan is an institution maker in one sense. He has been director in several institutions. He was the director for the Institute of Research and Development in Language Policy in Florianópolis and was its director from 2002. For almost 8 years, he was the director of that institute, where he took up different government projects. Interesting thing is those projects got implemented. Like for example, the co-officialization of minority languages at county level. Because of that project, today the Brazilian regions have 29 official multilingual counties. So congratulations to Gilvan for that. He also created the National Inventory of Linguistic Diversity of the Ministry of Culture and also was part of the bilingual intercultural public border schools. From 2010 to 14, he has been active at the international level, you can say. He was the executive director of the International Institute for the Portuguese Language in Africa, wherein like many agencies like Community of Portuguese speaking countries came together. 9 countries came together and did a wonderful job. Most important thing among those projects were the common orthographic vocabulary of the Portuguese language, and also they developed an online platform for teaching Portuguese as a foreign language. From 2008 onward, Professor Gilvan is associated with UNESCO in various capacities, because now he is of course the chair, but right from 2008 you can see that he has been part of the UNESCO. He has participated in many conferences related to the same. For example, he published reports on plurilingualism in Brazil. He was part of IFAP, the UNESCO Second International Conference in 2011, and he was also played an important role in the revision of the UNESCO's Language Vitality Index, because I think most of us are using the language index. The UNESCO came out with 2 atlases, one in 2009 and another in 2010. So in this 2015, there was a consultative meeting which was organized by UNESCO in London. So in that meeting, they had revised the Vitality Index and Gilvan was part of it. From 2018 to 22, he has been awarded as the chairholder of an important UNESCO chair on language policies for multilingualism. This chair is based at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, and it brings together 22 universities from 13 countries in 4 continents: Brazil, South Africa, Angola, Belgium, China, Spain, Estonia, France, India, University of Hyderabad especially, and also CIL is trying to become a member, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, and so many other countries. The goal of this chair is to organize a worldwide network of research on multilingualism and sustainable development. They have 7 axes. I think most of the people in this group will be very happy to be associated with this chair also. Hello?
No problem.
So, like there are many aspects to multilingualism where they are concentrating on internationalization, intercultural mediation, language education, translation, accessibility, economy and linguistic rights, information and communication technologies, borders and diaspora. I mean, we can talk about Gilvan for more than half an hour, but I don't want to take his time and your time. Once again, I want to welcome him on behalf of the association. He has, of course, won so many awards and a lot of publications to his credit. Gilvan is an interesting person also, because he's very friendly and down to earth, and I'm sure that that is going to be reflected in his talk today. Today he is going to talk on a dialogue between Tamil and Portuguese in Indian context and beyond: history, geopolitics and management. In one sense, this is going to be a reconnection between the 2 countries. So we're looking forward for that. We thank you for accepting to deliver your talk today. So now it is 7:07 and we will have maybe 40 minutes for your talk, GILVAN, followed by questions by professors and other scholars, and we can have a discussion. By 8:15 we have to close the session. So I request some of you, like for example, if students do not feel comfortable to ask questions, please feel free to write in the chat box whatever you want to ask him. If time permits, we can allow you to speak and ask, like he can answer the questions. Otherwise, we will be very happy to send the questions across to GILVAN, who can answer by email to you. Maybe that will be another way of reconnecting with GILVAN. So thank you once again for accepting our invitation. Now the floor is yours.
Oh, Wanakam. Thank you very much, Uma, for the presentation. I would like to thank the association, Tamil Sangam, for the invitation. It's a pleasure. It was a very good initiative for me, so I had to learn many things, and I hope we can dialogue today about our two languages. I am in this moment in Florianópolis. I'm trying to. Do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. We are seeing the screen.
Okay. So I am in this moment in the Federal University of Santa Catarina, but the university is, of course, my living room because of the pandemic. Our university has 43,000 students and is on the island of Santa Catarina, connected with the continent with a bridge. The city has about 1 million inhabitants, and you can see it is the second southernmost state in Brazil. So you are in South India, and we are here in South Brazil. I will not tell about the chair again. Uma has made a very good presentation of the axes and the universities that are part of the chair. And I would say we have three goals today. First is to introduce the Portuguese language, its situation in the world, and to establish some connections with India and Indian multilingualism. The second is to remember historical links between Tamil and Portuguese that existed and was very strong and interesting. And the third one is to propose a discussion on possible comparative geopolitics of both languages, if we consider that both are international languages in the same sense. First of all, some motivations. On February 4th, the community of Portuguese-speaking countries, in the person of Ambassador Francisco Ribeiro Teles, received a letter of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of India, signed by your Minister of Foreign Affairs, asking for assistance to prepare India's application for membership as an associate observer of the community. That's a novelty. That's something unique in the sense of re-establishing this connection between India and the Portuguese-speaking countries. This began to happen in 2017, when your Prime Minister Narendra Modi attributed to the Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa the title of Indian citizen in the diaspora. Antonio Costa is the first Indian person to be Prime Minister from Portugal. He comes from a Goan family that is more than 450 years connected to Portuguese culture and with Portuguese India. So from the conversations came an invitation to be present in the 150th birthday from Gandhi last year. And then in December 2019, this step was decided that India would apply to be part as observer of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. What is this community? It's an international association with 9 permanent members. All of them have Portuguese as official language. That's a criterion to be a member state. And the organization has now 18 associate observers. Countries, for example, like Namibia, that is very strong connected to Angola, or a country like Uruguay that was already part of Brazil, is the only country in South America that did not become independent from Spain or Portugal, but from Brazil, or a country like Senegal that was part of the Portuguese Empire for a long period. The community has its headquarters in Lisbon and works with different axes for peacekeeping, for development, and of course for using the Portuguese language to promote friendship and to promote business and to promote culture and scientific cooperation. That's not the only association that connects India to Portuguese. We are parts of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. You know, we have 4 official languages in this organization: Portuguese, Russian, English, Chinese as official languages. Of course, India and South Africa choose English to represent themselves. So we have here a huge area for planning language policies for our common languages. Could Portuguese be a resource for India in this new context? I just tell you in 1 minute the experience of China. While Goa was incorporated in India in 1961 and the Portuguese language was not continued, China did not accept the return of Macau when Portugal wanted to withdraw in 1974, when the dictatorship came to an end. But China negotiated to receive Macau back only after have received Hong Kong in 1996. So Macau came back to China in 1999 with an agreement that kept Portuguese as official language till 2049. China did not join the CPLP, but created an own organization, the Macau Economic and Development Forum, that brings together China and the 9 Portuguese-speaking countries. This organization is a formal one and represents a channel for Chinese investments and for scientific cooperation in many areas, especially in university field. It has a strong effect on the contact between both cultures and languages. For example, we had only 2 degrees in Portuguese in China in 1992, and today there are 40 degrees in Portuguese. And Macau is a central point for master and PhD studies in Portuguese in whole Asia. So China used the fact that it had English in Hong Kong and Portuguese in Macau to expand and to make its diplomatic activities more complex. Portuguese is an official language in 10 countries, 9 CPLP countries, and China. Is spoken in an area of almost 11 million square kilometers in 4 continents, has a number of probably 260 million speakers, 7 million of them in the diaspora, is official language in 5 regional economic blocs. For example, Portuguese is one of the official languages of the European Union, of Mercosur, the common market of the South in South America, or the Southern African Development Community, headquartered in Johannesburg, that includes 17 countries. We have 29,000 kilometers of borders with other languages because no Portuguese-speaking countries has border with another Portuguese-speaking countries. All are linguistic islands, and it brings opportunities for promoting the language in the neighbor countries. Very rich multilingual diversity is represented in our countries. Probably we have around 340 different languages, what is about 3.5 or 4% of the languages of the world. And Portuguese is the 5th most used language in internet with 170 million users. Probably in the next month, Bahasa Indonesia will surpass Portuguese as the 5th language most used in internet. We are observing that interesting situation. If we come to the population, you can see that Portuguese is very concentrated in Brazil. 76% of the speakers are in Brazil. Less than 4% of speakers of Portuguese are in Portugal. Mozambique in the Indian Ocean is the 2nd most important Portuguese-speaking countries from population, although not all Mozambicans speak Portuguese till now. And this situation will be very different in few years. Using data from the Population Office of the United Nations, we can make a provision that Brazil will not be any longer a center for the Portuguese language. In 2100, only 45% of the speakers will be in Brazil. And we are going to have a very important increase in number of speakers in Angola and Mozambique. And in Portugal, the numbers came down to less than 2% of the speakers. So we are having here a very interesting situation, amazing situation, about a language that was born in Europe, that became centrally spoken in South America in the 19th and 20th and the beginning of the 21st century, and that will be mainly an African language in the end of the 21st century. So 50% of the speakers will be in Angola and Mozambique together, and only 45% will be in Brazil. And all our countries together will have less than 5% of the speakers of Portuguese, what means Portuguese is definitively a Southern Hemisphere language and integrated the southern part of the Atlantic Ocean in an axis between Africa and South America. Of course, if you see the maps of the Portuguese-speaking countries, you can see that they are a string of stops in the route to India. India is a very important and central in the constitution of this community of Portuguese-speaking countries. And so entering CPLP is a very right place for India to occupy in this context, because India is so important for our countries. If you see this map of the first trip from Vasco da Gama to India in 1498, you are going to see that he could not navigate straight down on the coast of Africa because of the wind regimes. That time, for sailing to India, it was necessary to come almost to the coast of Brazil. That is the reason why Brazil is strong integrated in the route to India. The second trip from Pedro Álvares Cabral in April 1500 arrived in Brazil, discovered Brazil, like the Portuguese say, but of course we had here very many indigenous peoples speaking more than 1,000 different languages. And from that point, Brazil is integrated in this route and in the Portuguese speaking countries. There is a joke, every 7 years old boys and girls in Brazil know the name of Pedro Álvares Cabral, the commander of this second trip. And for boys and girls, the easiest question that the teacher can do is, who has discovered Brazil? Every child know that it was Pedro Álvares Cabral. That is why we can represent this trip and the connection to India in the most important book of the Portuguese literature of all times, Os Lusíadas, published in 1572 and probably finished in 1556 by Luís Vaz de Camões, that was a Portuguese sailor and soldier that came to Asia and Africa and lived some years on this route. He wrote a book with more than 8,816 verses in 10 songs, chanting this trip, the gods, the cultures, the difficulties, the cultures. So this is a very important book, translated in many languages, shows the importance of this connection. Luís de Camões is in the same monastery today as Vasco da Gama. They are side by side in the Jerônimos monastery in Lisbon, and can be visited in this very important church created for remembering the connection between East and West made by Vasco da Gama. I couldn't find any translation from Os Lusíadas in Tamil. There is a translation to Malayalam. There is a translation to Konkani. And 2 years ago, I met a professor in GNU. He was translating Os Lusíadas into Hindi. But I didn't find any translation to Tamil till now. This situation brought to very many settlements of Portuguese in India, and the high point of the settlements were between 1510 and 1620, also about 100 years. Then there was a world war against the Dutch. Dutch had taken many of these settlements. Yes, are you hearing? Can you hear me?
No problem, sir.
Okay.
No problem, you can start.
Very many settlements. Then there is a second phase of this Portuguese situation in India till the beginning or the middle of the 18th century. And after the 18th century, Portuguese begin to lose these connections, to lose these settlements, to change their interest to Brazil. Brazil became then the most important point for Portuguese because of gold discoveries and sugar. And the presence of Portuguese in India become weaker and weaker. But we must refer that many linguistic effects of this presence are to see today. I mention here only the Creoles that are still spoken, very many other Creole languages that came from the so-called Basso Portuguese, the Low Portuguese, that was a kind of business language connecting all these regions and harbors. These Portuguese Creoles are still spoken in Sri Lanka, for example, or very few people speak língua da casa, the home language in Daman, a língua dos velhos, the language of old people in Diu, Noling, spoken in Korlai by no more than 1,000 persons, and Cananor Creole, that was seen as an extinct language, but 2015 journalists found only one family with 5 persons that still speak at home the Cananor's Creole. We must imagine a situation in all these settlements, or in many of these settlements, people spoke Tamil and one variety of Portuguese, Malayalam and one variety of Portuguese, Konkani and one variety of Portuguese. And that brought as one effect that very many words from Portuguese entered these languages as loan words, especially in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there was the interesting situation. Many persons were brought that worked in construction, in building, in naval sector. So it evolved a professional cast of persons in Sri Lanka with Portuguese descendants or ancestry that were very specialized in different professions. So more than 50 words were mapped by Shihan de Silva. And what I found interesting is that very many of these words are not Portuguese in origin, but even come from indigenous languages from Brazil. For example, caju, or goiaba, coiapalam, or ananas, anasi, are words from Tupinambá language and from Guarani language from Brazil. And other words come from other indigenous languages. So there is an interesting mapping of these loan words to be made, to be established in documentation. That could be an interesting point for working together in the future. This book, Caste, Catholic Christianity and the Language of Conversion, I had no time to see the other books of this interesting author, Stephen, is focused on establishing a social history of this society, Tamil Portuguese society in the 16th century. He explores very interesting aspects about marriage, about the working places, about the fact that Portuguese were not so present with institutions in the coast of Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu was a refuge for Portuguese that wanted to integrate themselves in the Indian society. The Portuguese institutions like Inquisition or military or government were much weaker in Tamil Nadu. So it was a point that made possible for free Portuguese to escape from this Portuguese control, colonial control, and live a life together with Tamil speakers and with Tamil families and so on. So there are very many documents mapping this situation, and I'm very grateful to this author that he could produce a vast work on these social historic relations. Last year, I had the privilege to write a paper together with Professor Sailaja Pingali from the University of Hyderabad. And it gave me very many ideas on these, on the presence of Portuguese in the Indian multilingualism, because we explored the connections between Portuguese and English. Professor Sailaja Pingali is one of the best specialists of India in the history of English. And we could see that Portuguese had created more than 300 schools in whole Asia, had established curricula, had established syllabi, and trained personnel and teachers. And that was a very useful experience for Britain when they arrived. And our paper intended to map how the East India Company, for example, and other English organizations connected to the English Church, for example, used the Portuguese experience in education to create their own education system. Cabral says, this author, that we can say that modern education system in India was initiated by Jesuit missionaries. Just a very interesting fact, Jesuits established 1542 the São Paulo College in Goa. That was maybe the first high education institution, Western type in India. And some years later, they established the same college in Brazil, in São Paulo. And so there were these two Jesuit schools, one in Goa and one in São Paulo. And from the Brazilian school emerged the biggest Portuguese-speaking city in the world, the city of São Paulo, that has today 21 million persons. So almost the same size of New Delhi. And the center of this city was the same college that was created in Goa in 1542. So this paper made possible to think in a theoretical approach that writing the history of a language in multilingual view should not be writing the language of the history of this language alone anymore, but we should write the history of language repertoires. What we did in the paper was to try to write the history of Portuguese and English as teaching languages together. Maybe it gives us the idea that we can try the same for Tamil and Portuguese, writing the history of both languages in this connection, as we can do with the connection from the language with many more languages that were present and were important in the history of these languages. Another point of this paper was to bring the idea that intellectual history, cultural history, was a very important point to connect both West and East, because on one side, because Sylvain Auroux says that the 16th century was the most important one for what he called the technological revolution of grammatization. Jesuits and other Catholic orders were very important activists of establishing grammars for languages. Only in Latin America, Jesuits established grammars for 125 different languages in the 16th and 17th century. And many established grammars in Asia too. So, for example, the first grammar of an Indian language, of Konkani, Western grammar, of course, Western type grammar, Latin grammar, written by the Jesuit Thomas Stephen, or in Portuguese, Tomás Estevão in 1640. But we can see the same history if we look at another revolution, not the revolution of grammatization, but the revolution of printing, that the cartilha in língua tamil e portuguesa, in Romanized Tamil script, was printed only 24 years after the invention of movable press by Gutenberg in Germany. So it's the very interesting situation that Tamil was the first non-European language to be printed in this new revolution. Tamil was printed before Russian, before Greek, and before many European languages. In this case, this book was printed in Lisbon, but immediately after that, printing agencies began to work in India with imported types from Europe or with types developed in India itself. So India was one of the first centers for printing in the world. If you compare, printing began 1560s, 1570s here. In Brazil, printing began only 1808. when the king from Portugal escaped to the occupation from Portugal by Napoleon, and the capital from Portugal became Rio de Janeiro. So centuries after India became a center for printing, the activity of printing began in Brazil, what was very bad for our languages, and we have very less registers than India of this connection between cultures, between Portuguese and the other languages. Henriques was one of the first scholars that learned and studied Tamil, as you know. And I was very glad to see that his grammar, Arte da Língua Malabar, was published by the Harvard Oriental Series 76, and make possible to see how the grammar of Tamil was written in Portuguese. It's a very interesting work. Unfortunately, his dictionary was not found. It's known that he wrote a dictionary in the same period, but the dictionary was never found. After that period, in the 19th century and 20th century, the presence of Portuguese became very complicated. The education involuted to a very formal situation. Initiatives were lost. Very many people left the Portuguese language to search knowledge and opportunities in English. So there was a decadence of Portuguese connected to kind of Portuguese tradition closed itself, lost dynamism, lost initiative, and that was bad for school, as you can see in this comment on the primary education in Goa in the 1950s. What is very interesting for us, maybe we could discuss after this presentation, that we could prepare a joint book with scholars of Tamil-speaking countries and Portuguese-speaking countries, a book on these joint traditions, especially if the accession from India to the community of Portuguese the community of Portuguese-speaking countries materialized in September this year in the Luanda summit in Angola. Diplomatic circles would be very glad if we could produce a book like that, researching different aspects of the connections between Tamil and Portuguese. Second point, I will briefly put some ideas for our discussion. Tamil and Portuguese are international languages, are official languages in more than one national space, and have tensions between these connections. Of course, Tamil in Tamil Nadu, Sri Lanka, Singapore, and Malaysia, and Portuguese in Portugal, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Equatorial Guinea, São Tomé e Príncipe, Angola, Brazil, Mozambique, and East Timor. So there is a management of these international language that are not only international. I explored this concept of international languages in a course in the MGIMO University in Moscow last year, in the sense that more and more languages become international languages, working in repertoires with other languages, new repertoires, of course, because they have a new geography, increasing, receiving support from speakers that are not living in the official countries, but in the diasporas, with more vehicularity degree. It means learned by people that don't have the language as a mother tongue. So more and more speakers are not mother tongue speakers. They are opportunities for openness and connect, multiply spaces. They have to change the management strategies because of the tension between these management centers. In the case of Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, for example, that have different approaches in some aspects of the management. Less monumentality is typical for international languages. It is typical for national languages. And speakers from different spaces have an increased perception of the importance of the language. Tamil and Portuguese are not only international, they are pluricentric and diglossic languages. And it's interesting to research in what sense. We know that pluricentric languages have more than one normative center that established standards. They establish distance between different varieties that are to distinguish and that bring ground for identity and social singularity. They must have official status in different nations, although it's what official means can be different from one country to other. For example, if we see that Tamil has a status as a teaching school, teaching a language in South Africa, Portuguese has this status in South Africa as well. So Tamil and Portuguese have a presence in South Africa. Portuguese-speaking people in South Africa are more than 200,000. And so how both languages are situated in the teaching system of South Africa, how managers from South Africa observe norms that are created in the Portuguese-speaking countries and Tamil-speaking countries, which standards managers in South Africa prefer. So we could see here a strategy for analyzing Tamil and Portuguese together, in the sense to analyze how the perception of the language policies from both languages are received in third space, in this case, for example, South Africa. Pluricentricity is accepted as a fact, and as said, it's relevant for the identity of our people. The codification of standards is not necessarily made with the same tools and the same strategies. So we can have different orthographies, we can have different grammars, and we can have attempts to unify these instruments or not. It depends on the strategies we are using. In the case of Portuguese, we have a new experience since 20 years. I was director of this International Institute of the Portuguese Language in the small country, Cape Verde, situated on the coast of Africa. And the International Institute of the Portuguese Language has a task to create a dialogue between the different standards and to create common tools for the standardization and for spreading Portuguese in the world. For example, since the time I was director, the Institute is working in the common orthographic vocabulary of the Portuguese language. We had till 1992 orthographies for Portuguese, what created difficulties in the United Nations, in international organizations, in the circulation of books. And in 1990, an orthographic agreement was made. It was implemented after 2010 with many tensions. And it's interesting, for example, that Angola never accepted this agreement, although Portugal and Brazil did it, that are the most important printing centers and internet centers for the language. It's interesting to see that in the case of Tamil, if you take the orthographic change from 1978, I read in Klein that you had the same question with Sri Lanka, that Sri Lanka didn't get these changes in orthography. And so we have a comparative field to study both languages from the point of view of management. That is quite interesting that we are organizing next year in Florianópolis the 8th World Conference on Pluricentric Languages. It is a conference organized by the Working Group on Pluricentric Languages and Non-Dominant Varieties, directed by Professor Rudolf Moore from the University of Graz in Austria, since Michael Klein died. And we have almost 50 mapped pluricentric languages in the world, diglossic languages in most cases. And this, the 7th conference, sorry, will be in next year. It would be this year, but because of COVID-19, it will be in July next year. So I would like to propose that we could maybe have a roundtable on Tamil and Portuguese from the point of view of pluricentrism, establishing connections in management, in geopolitics, in construction of tools. So it would be very interesting if we could have this roundtable in the conference, especially because the central topic is standards in the digital age. The books are published in this format in Austria. And here is the invitation. I hope we can also discuss this point. Last point, I was looking for translations from Tamil into Portuguese and saw, for example, that the Tirukural is not translated in Portuguese. So Os Lusíadas is not translated in Tamil and Tirukural is not translated in Portuguese. Here is an interesting point for maybe proposing joint projects of translation as well. To end, I brought you a small poem from a writer that probably you know, Eunice de Souza. Eunice de Souza died 3 years ago. She lived in Pune, and differently from what we can expect it, she did not write this poem in Portuguese. She wrote it in English because she is an English-speaking writer. It was translated from English into Portuguese by Ana Luísa Amaral. I read you this poem, Remembering Old Goa, in Portuguese, and you can read it in English to finish our discussion. Idílio. Quando Goa era Goa, o meu avô diz que os bandidos desceram da montanha até a nossa aldeia só para se banharem nas nascentes frias e visitarem a capela de Nossa Senhora. As senhoras de idade estavam em segurança entre os seus sacos de arroz e malaguetas, imperturbáveis. Quando as almas inquietas no purgatório apedrejavam os telhados para pedir orações, até as cobras mordiam só para quebrar a monotonia. Thank you very much.
So, Nandri, thank
Nandri.
you, obrigada. Obrigada, Professor Gilvan Müller de Oliveira. I would like to say that we have 25 minutes for discussion, but before the discussion starts, I would like to summarize his talk so that there are many students in this group who might throw some questions. So Professor Gilvan gave an overview of Portuguese speaking communities, the countries especially, the historical connections between Portuguese and India, and outlined how Brazil was linked to India. The publications from then, the settlements of Portuguese in India, the creation of Indo-Portuguese creoles, Portuguese loanwords, especially in Sri Lankan Tamil, and how the Portuguese and English had an impact on the history of Indian multilingualism, the arrival of the Portuguese missionaries in India, and their contributions to the development of literature and other subjects. And also, he hinted about the 16th century's importance in the history of Portuguese and Tamil, especially that was the period of the technological revolution of grammaticalization. He also outlined the early grammars of Tamil written in Portuguese. It was very interesting to hear those. Thank you so much for that. And he proposed to initiate a joint book, a joint venture by the Portuguese Tamil scholars of today, so that the connections between the Portuguese and Tamil can be, in one sense, revisited and we can be reconnected. The later part of his talk was mostly on the status of Portuguese and Tamil as international languages, how these languages are pluricentric and diglossic in nature. He discussed about all the orthographic changes that led to the common orthography development of Portuguese in Africa, and that could be used as a model for other languages as well. He also hinted about the orthographic changes that happened in Tamil in India, but the same changes could not take place in Sri Lankan Tamil for various reasons. He invited the group to join the roundtable on plurilinguistic languages, and also he mentioned that there is no translation of Tirukkural in Portuguese. So that is again an open invitation to the Tamil scholars here who would like to take up this great task of translating one of the important documents, one of the important literatures of Tamil into Portuguese. So obrigada, nandri again. Now we open this talk for discussion. Like we already mentioned, like we have only 22 minutes. So please be brief with your questions, and you can have more discussions once he starts. You ask your question and GILVAN can answer, and probably you can have the discussions. And as I already mentioned, the students are free to put up their questions in the chat box, which will be forwarded to him. This is not to close the doors to the students. We will also encourage, this is mainly for the students as I understand. So it will be also open to the students for questions. Yes. So we do have, at this juncture, of course, the president of Tamil Linguistics Association, my teacher is very much here. Professor Karnakaran is here. Looks like he has some deep thoughts and maybe he will ask the first question.
Thank you, Dr. Uma. I have 3 comments. Shall I?
Yes.
One is, he was mentioning about, the speaker was mentioning about the conversational analysis with reference to Portuguese and Tamil. What type of Portuguese usages are commonly used in such conversations? Are they only lexical features, items, or morphological and grammatical features, or that blend? That's one comment. The second comment, are there any works available with reference to Portuguese and Tamil, even at least in the form of an article or book or monograph, or Portuguese and any Indian language? That's one thing. The third one is with particular reference to the linguistic problems found in the multilingual nations where Portuguese is used. I think he was mentioning about 10 countries where Portuguese is used in different domains, of course, with the particular reference to multilingual countries also. What type of problems in those countries we find more really complex or less complex or simple? And were there any, how those problems were solved, at least in some of the multilingual nations where Portuguese is also used as one of the official languages, or languages in contact. If the speaker wants, he can clarify a couple of these points or comments. Thank you very much, Dr. Uma.
Okay, so GILVAN, it's your turn to answer him. Would you like to answer now?
Yes, but I'm not sure I could understand everything very well because of the sound, but
Okay,
I just
can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
very well.
the first question was about the features. He wanted to know, besides the lexical features, are there any other features that have influenced Tamil?
Yes, I think that is one of the things that we can research. I don't think so, but it's necessary to research the topic. I didn't see any reference in the literature trying to explore that aspect of the connection.
Okay, and the second question was, he would like to know about the works, especially the Portuguese Tamil works, books or monographs in Portuguese to Tamil and also Portuguese to other languages, if there is any bibliographic compilation.
Yes, I can send him later some bibliography that I have found, but I'm sure again that we have much to explore in this field.
Yeah, that is true. That's why.
For example, if we take these work from Stephen, and
Yes.
he has very rich primary documents. He mentioned primary documents that are in archives that are not explored in the books. The documentation that he used in these long years, in this work of long years, is never explored from the point of view of language, because he, of course, was interested in social history. So that's an opportunity for us too.
Okay. And the third question, or rather comment, was, of course, he mentioned that there are linguistic problems in multilingual nations, and he is asking, like, do you have anything to say about how do you go about solving them? Of course, that's something you can answer.
Oh, that would need 1 more hour to speak about. I would like only to say very short that we have many problems, and many of our problems comes from the colonial character of Portuguese in our history. Colonialism made very bad things in India, in Brazil, in Africa. Very many problems that we have that seem to be linguistic problems are in reality derived from this colonial character of Portuguese. Now we are in a situation with the community to work with Portuguese and other languages in a post-colonial and decolonizing strategy, so that we can solve these problems in a very different way. What I would repeat is very difficult because of this long colonial heritage that was so bad and violent in all the contexts.
Have you solved any of those problems, at least 1 or 2 problems after independence, after the colonial power was over?
I couldn't hear.
So,
Sir KK sir, couldn't hear your voice. There is a
can you repeat?
problem in your...
No, yeah, what I wanted to know.
Now it is okay.
You see, we have many complex problems due to the colonial powers those days. What I wanted to know is, have these countries have tried to solve any of the complex problems after independence? And how far they have succeeded in their attempt?
Yes, it's a very difficult, a question that needs lots of reflection, because the African countries have strategies, and Brazil has other strategies. Umarani has mentioned in the presentation that we worked, for example, the strategy of co-officializing languages in county level. Other languages have initiated bilingual education, like Mozambique, or the recognition of national languages. But most of the experiences are initial, because only in the last 25, 30 years, the Portuguese-speaking countries have democracies, that can include demands of the linguistic communities, the language communities, indigenous people, in a clear legislation that makes possible for the states to have a reform and to use resources to support this linguistic diversity and multilingualism. So I think you are proposing a dialogue between the traditions of supporting multilingualism in India and in our countries, because we don't know each other from this point of view. It's an interesting dialogue front as well.
May I say something?
Yes.
Murugayan from Paris. Thanks for the lecture. I'm not going to ask you questions simply because we have done something in France, but unfortunately the publications which are done in France are not known outside. That's one thing. Second, T.P. Meenakshi Sundaram, some 650 years ago, he published so many borrowings from Portuguese into Tamil. So one thing. Second, I don't know whether you mentioned about this book. Can you say this? This was published by Father Tanyanayagam, one of the earliest dictionaries. And also,
yes.
we initiated a project with Lisbon Classic University, who are good in also in French language, to do some linguistic analysis of the original books like Tambiran Vanakam, and 3 of the earliest books. That's going on.
Very good. Very, very important, this dictionary.
Simply wanted to give you some information. I think Tamil from a cultural point of view, what are the lexical creations made in those earliest Tamil books published by the Portuguese missionaries in the 16th century. This was the book published by our department, Christianity and Islam. I think we will be in touch. Thanks anyway. It's really good. I don't want to take much of your time. All the best. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations for the project.
We will be in touch. I will let you know. I will contact you through Dr. Kamachi.
Okay, fine.
Okay, thank you.
May I speak now?
Professor Bolas, yeah.
Yes, I'm Professor Balasubramanian, Vice Chancellor, Tamil University, Tanjavur. I really a very excellent presentation. Thank you for your presentation, first of all. And I am confident that the Thirukural will be translated into Portuguese. I take up the matter with the government of Tamil Nadu, and we will find a way out to translate as soon as possible into this whole thing. Second, definitely, we will try to collaborate with you in the roundtable conference, which you are proposing in July next year. We will try to participate in that and make presentations. Our scholars will be ready. And third thing, only one small question that you are telling about this plurilinguistic nature of these 2 languages. You are referring to Sri Lanka, Singapore, Malaysia with regard to Tamil. In these countries, the people were settled long back. But now, due to the globalization, there are many Tamilians settled across the world, especially in Europe and America. They have their own identity now, and more demand for learning the language and retaining the language, and we are also supporting them. How do you locate this kind of latest developments in your theory of that plurilinguistic nature? Thank you.
Right, you are right. Diasporas are more and more important for the languages. It's a new way of internationalizing. The same happens to Portuguese. We have more than 1.5 million Portuguese speakers in US, more than 300,000 speakers of Portuguese in Japan, more than 700,000 in Europe. So, and these people are very active. They want to keep the language. They create associations to teach the children. so that they can, the language can be kept as heritage languages. And the same happens in Tamil in more than 50 different countries. We had the opportunity, Professor Umarani, me and some colleagues, to speak about this question in a Congress in the Federal University of Bahia, online Congress, 1 month ago. And Professor Umarani told us very interesting analysis exactly from the initiatives for education in Tamil in the diaspora. So I think we have an interface there. It's different from the approach of pluricentric languages in the sense that that approach needs that the language be official. But what we can interpret is that the language can be official in different ways, like the example I gave from South Africa, in that 5 Indian languages are recognized as teaching languages. So there is a mandate for managers to include the languages, and of course they have to decide. They have to make decisions on what standard will be used. Standard from Tamil Nadu, standard from Sri Lanka, what orthography, what teaching books. Will they develop their own books related to Tamil spoken in South Africa, or will they use books that comes from centers of standardization of the language? All these decisions reflect this new situation of the languages in international sphere. So I think diaspora is a very strategic point, phenomenon to analyze the history of the future of the languages.
I have one question.
One information. Australia has recently announced that Tamil is one of the official languages for the diaspora people.
Very important.
If I can I ask you a question? Very inspiring talk. We are so amazed that Portuguese has been with us from the 16th century onwards. We use lots of Portuguese words like alamari, jannal, and I wonder if you have any Tamil word on top of your head right now. Do you use Tamil word? Do you use any Tamil word? Or do the Portuguese use any Tamil word because of that? The influence.
Probably. What happens is because Portuguese is a very spread language, probably Tamil words are used, for example, in the Portuguese from Mozambique. Mozambique is the Portuguese-speaking countries with the most important presence of Indian citizens or Indian persons abroad. But I am a speaker of Brazilian Portuguese. In Brazil is a country with very small Indian immigration. We have in our country around 10,000 Indians. Most of them arrived in the 60s as professors or specialists in nuclear energy, or business persons in very concentrated cities like Manaus in the Amazonas region. So I don't think we in Brazil use Tamil words, but because of the strong immigration from Indian people to Mozambique, especially after 61, probably your question can be answered by a colleague from Mozambique that analyzed the presence and the life of these bilingual or trilingual Indian communities in Mozambique, I would say.
I know the French colonists took the word curry, Colombo. They changed it to Colombo. I think the curry, Colombo are the familiar words, spread around the world of the colonies. I'm sure, Portuguese should use some Tamil words around there. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to explore like how much Tamil influenced Portuguese. I agree with Vasu because it will be because they were here for many years. So there definitely some words would have entered into their missionary work also, without which they could not have succeeded. So we need to explore that. Yeah. So any other questions from audience?
Okay, well, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I'm Pasumban from Pasumban, CAL Pardhavani Project Resource Person, Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore. I have a question regarding the translation. First of all, I thank you very much for your thought-provoking lecture. Regarding translation, do you have any Sangam literature in Portuguese? What are the literature you have, translated literature versions you have? Tell me, please. Thank you.
Can you repeat? Can you repeat? I didn't hear well.
Okay. Are there any translated works of Sangam literature into Portuguese?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't focus this topic, but I can search and send you later the information.
Okay, thank you. I have my email address. You please send through that. I sent
Please write,
my
write in the chat and
I wrote my email address. I wrote.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So any other questions?
Yes, Uma. Can I?
Yes. Yes, sir. Ramamurthy.
First of all, Gilvan, it's really a great and mind-blowing lecture. You have not only, given us a brief history of the Portuguese language travel, 500 years of, travel, but also you have identified some of the gray areas where we can work together. And I'm happy that you have, referred Professor Jayasilan's works, Jayasilan Stephen. And there is one more book he has, edited when he was in Sandiniketan. There he mentioned about the relation between Portuguese language and Tamil. So the translation works and other details that, you can go through it. And another thing is very interesting thing, the diasporic situation, where you have mentioned that an European language traveled to Brazil, South America, then moved to Mozambique. And you have extrapolated a kind of trend that it will be 45% in Mozambique. I'm curious to know what is the attraction in Mozambique than in Brazil. That's one thing. And another thing is you mentioned about the script reform. Maybe in 1976 when it was started, Sri Lankan people may not be not comfortable with that script reform. But now today, because of this internet and e-code consortium, everybody is adopting the scripts, Tamil reform script. And my curiosity is what makes Brazilians or the Portuguese to settle in 2050 or 2100, okay, in Mozambique.
The first question I didn't understand very well. If Uma could repeat, there is some problem in my.
All right, Gilvan, I'll tell you. The first question is, you narrated the history of travel. You extrapolated a trend that in 2100 in Mozambique, 45% of Portuguese will be settled, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the reason? What is the attraction in Mozambique?
Did you get the question?
You ask why Mozambique will be so important in 2100?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, the United Nations call that demographic trends or demographic regimes. Brazil was a country between 1940 and 1980 that had a very growing up population. So in the 60s, the average of children was 5.2 children per woman. So the Brazilian population was growing up very fast. And now our population began to stop. It's not growing anymore, or it's not growing fast anymore. But the countries in Africa are in this moment crossing this demographic regime. They have better healthy systems, so older people live more. Less children die when they are less than 1 year old, so they survive. But families have the habit of having many children. The children do not die, and the older people live longer. So you have a boom in the population. And Angola and Mozambique are exactly in this moment crossing this tendency. Whereas the population of Portugal began to decrease in 2015. Last year, Portugal had only 84,000 babies, and 120 old people died. So the population is going back. And in Brazil, soon the same will happen after 2040. That is the reason why the future of our language, like the future of many other languages, the future of French is in Africa. The future of Portuguese is in Africa as well. And Mozambique in this situation is well situated because Mozambique was always the country, the Portuguese-speaking country with the biggest population. So the demographic center of Portuguese will be nearer India, in the Indian Ocean, in few decades. So one more reason for working together and establishing connections.
Yeah, thank you. And,
all right. So
another. Can I ask one more?
Yes, we are running out of time, but be quick.
Yeah. The other project, the joint project you suggested is very wonderful and very, very interesting. That, we can take Africa, where Portuguese and Tamil diasporic people are there. But if you see the history of this diasporic background, the Portuguese traveled in a kind of power situation, but Tamilians moved there in a kind of apartheid kind of situation. So it would be really an interesting thing, the relation between Portuguese and Tamil in Africa. So if it materialize, it would bring some kind of new theories in linguistics. Thank you very much, Gilvan.
All right. So thank you. Yes.
Especially because in this sense, South Africa is an example where both Tamil and Portuguese speakers came without power. It means most of the Portuguese-speaking people in South Africa had to escape from Angola and Mozambique after independence. So they came to the country in very humble situation, and now they are integrated in some way in the South African context as the Tamil speakers. So that's an interesting example.
Okay, so we took extra 5 minutes. We were given only 8:15. It is 8:20. 5 minutes we were already behind. But there are two questions from the students' side, and also one question from Prem Kumar from CIL. I do not know whether he wants to talk about it, or would you like to write to him? Prem Kumar, are you there? Prem Kumar? No response, but anyway, I think the question is there, you can see. And there is one, Pandian Ratinam, who has sent some comments, interesting comments in your chat. He is asking about Beshi. Are you aware of the compilation of Portuguese Tamil Latin dictionary compiled by Beshi?
Beshi is very famous. His works are world known in this field. So he is a very important scholar and had exactly this trilingual dictionary with Latin. We should take in consideration and include in our research.
Okay, so, and like the Prem Kumar's question from the chat is the same question, the first question what Professor Karnagaran has raised is about the relationship between the structure of both languages. I think you can answer that over email since we are running out of time. So, yes. And one last thing I would like to say, in this group I noticed that Edilisi is here. Edilisi is Gilvan's wife. So I think we should also thank her for being with us. She's also a linguist. So she's very much here with us. I don't know whether Edlisi has any questions to ask. No response. All right. So once again, I thank all of you for the interesting participation, and there will be a formal vote of thanks by Umar Raj, my colleague. So, Brigada Nandri. Thank you.
Sir, Vanakkam. I am proposing a vote of thanks. It is really, I am very happy, sir. Actually, you explained so many things. For example, the historical connection between Tamil and Portuguese, and the Gabriel trip to Calicut, Sri Lankan Portuguese Creoles. You mentioned about Creoles, how it is there. And the loan words in Sri Lankan Tamil, you explained the Kaju, Anashi, Veranda, so many words, how the Portuguese words in Sri Lankan Tamil was there. And Jai Seelan Stephens and the History of Tamil, that the book you mentioned about, and Ramurthy also added some more books also. It is very interesting. Those things we can include in your topic. And you mentioned a very interesting thing. One is the Romanized Tamil scripts, the printed by Thambiran Vanakkam. You wrote in Tamil also. It is very very catching one. That is in 1578. You mentioned that it is actually that 500 back. It was there. That was we can read those books also. And you mentioned that in Goa, the Portuguese and how it was as official, and how the people, then the primary school students read, and the illiterate, literate, like that you mentioned some points. And it was the diagnostic nature of languages. That is very interesting. Tamil and Bengali is diagnostic language. And Professor Karnagaran did a lot of research on diagnostic language. And in Calcutta, they have a Bengali language was now, it was merging. And now Tamil and the Portuguese, how it was there maintaining. And you are mentioned about official status, acceptance of plurality, codification of standards, orthographic reform, so many things. Complete details about your language and how it was parallelly, how Tamil was related. That was really interesting, mind-blowing, thought-provoking. Actually, it was I don't know much about this type of descriptions. This is the first time I'm hearing. We can compare. And you mentioned about the textbook preparation. Actually, Tamilians around in Africa, we are preparing textbooks for online teaching. We are teaching through online. The Tamil internet center is there in Chennai. Tamil Inaya Kalvi Kalagam. The virtual academy is preparing materials, and Professor Ponnavaiko is preparing materials for African students, how to prepare the materials. Professor Murugayan also involved in that thing, and he is telling that the Mariam and how the culture was went there in Africa, countries like that. So we have connections, and Professor Ramurthy also mentioned about we are migrant to the Africa, but you are the boss, the king, your ruler. So some connections will be there, and new theories will be come out from that area. So it is very interesting. Ramurthy also can work in that area. He told so many areas, the research areas are available like that. It is the questions, Professor K. Karnagaran raised 3 questions, and Professor Murugayan, Professor Vasu Ranganathan from America, Murugayan is from France, and Professor Balasubramaniam, the Vice Chancellor of this Tamil University, Professor Pasumban from the CAL, from Professor Ramurthy. So many eminent linguists raised questions, and you answered all the questions. It is really the discussion was whatever we planned, it was systematically done. So we are very thankful for your lecture, and your valuable time was spared, and we are our students get benefited. Whatever the questions, remaining questions also you will answer in future. and we will continue our collaboration. That is the thing, very important. On behalf of Tamil Mozhiyiyal Sangam and on behalf of my own, I thank you, sir, for giving a mind-blowing lecture. Thank you very much, and thanks once again. And the Professor Umarani, Deputy Director, Central Institute of Indian Languages, she is my colleague, and really it is she organized very well. In the right time, she completed those things. That is the very thing. So many questions, and the very good introduction she was given in the first 5 minutes. That is, we don't know about you, but she gave vividly, briefly, complete your biography, complete from A to Z. She gave. It is really very, very nice. I thank Professor Umarani on behalf of me and on behalf of Tamil Mozhiyiyal Sangam, and we had to thank a former professor, the president of Tamil Mozhiyiyal Sangam, Professor Karnagaran sir, and we had to thank the present Vice Chancellor, Dr. Balasubramaniam, Professor Balasubramaniam, Tamil University Vice Chancellor, Tamil University Tanjavur. He can do anything. That is the thing. Already Tamil University is doing lot of translation works. They translated Tirukkural into 64 languages. So definitely they can do Portuguese through Tamil University can do a lot of things. Definitely Balasubramanian definitely he will do it. And I thank in my bottom of heart that so many senior linguists from different areas they came. Vasaranganan from America, France, and your wife also participated in this program. And I know that it is North Indian students also participated in here, Kerala, Karnataka, and Prem Kuram from CAL. Finally, I thank the organizers who the Ramurthy, Kamachi sir, Sundarabalu, Kumaresan, Ramesh, they are the coordinators for this program. They are also did a very good job. I thank once again, and thank you all. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Namaskaram, sir. Vanakkam. Vandanam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Vanakkam. Vanakkam.
So,
thank you.
Nandri.
Thank you. So I also take this opportunity to thank the organizers for letting me preside over this wonderful lecture. Thank you once again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gilvan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thank you all, and have a very good weekend.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Vanakkam.
Vanakkam.
Vanakkam. Nandri.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we.
Yaar close பண்றாங்க?
Professor